listening to the Concierge Coaches Show with Bruce Cameron and Wayne Fritz, only on LA Talk Radio.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Concierge Coaches Show here on LA Talk Radio. I'm Bruce Cameron. Wayne is out of town this week, but he'll be with us next week. But fear not, we have a fantastic co-host with us this week. This is a person that I've known, I think, for about 20 years. I was thinking about it. I opened up the practice in South Lake in 2004, so it's been a while, and been so impressed with our special guest, Lori Van. She's with us today. Let me take my glasses off. Maybe I'll look better. I don't know, but she's maybe not. But she's been with. She's our special guest today, and folks, you know, this is a show primarily about coaching and consulting and helping others. And what's really great about Lori Van and Lori is just really taking her practice to the next level, if not the highest levels. So I'm going to get her to talk about that. And I think, you know, she's definitely for some of you all who are very enterprising, and you feel like you've mastered your kind of a concierge or solo practice, and you want to take things to the next level. Hearing Lori's story and what she's doing and possibly how she did it will be an inspiration to you. So, Lori, thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Well, and what an honor. So I guess what I'd like to start, you know, I had a little phone conversation, I think it was yesterday. And so if you could kind of talk about your beginnings, you know, you got licensed, and kind of walk us through the progression of things.
Yeah. Well, I've been in the mental health world since 1998. That's when I first started to see clients, back as a graduate student and then an intern, and have received a wide variety of experiences, everything from inpatient psychiatric, state hospital work when I was in undergrad. I've done the nonprofit sector, was a director for a local nonprofit, professor at 2 colleges in the DFW area, and worked at an outpatient clinic as well. And then just all of those different events culminated into eventually in 2008 going full time into private practice, because I had on the side since 2001, but making that leap, which if anyone has thought about it, is intimidating. It's a little bit anxiety provoking to take that leap of faith, but everything came together and have been doing it full-time private practice ever since then. And throughout the years, I've expanded the services to coaching. I do a whole lot of coaching with mental health practitioners who are either thinking about making that transition, or they have and they're in sort of a stuck point, or they're not quite sure what to do, or sometimes it's just like, hey, I'm in this ethical dilemma. What do I do? I've done the business consulting side with different nonprofits and companies, professional speaker for, dear heavens, I think for almost 25 years, nationally and internationally. I've been in the media game since.
And LoriVan.com is more of a speaker, more of your speaker side, right? Would you say?
Yes. Yeah. So I have multiple websites. So LoriVan.com, I broke that out on the advice of my coaches, because they're like, there's too much on the main counseling one and it gets a little confusing. And so, yeah, the Lori Van has the speaking and also a lot of the media stuff, because I mean, I've given over, I think, 330 different interviews, locally, nationally, internationally, all different formats, TV, print, podcast, and have a podcast now. Just started with Dr. Taylor called Crazy Simple.
Love that title.
Yes, thank you.
Right. I know. I thought I was crazy after that. Anyway, well, okay. So let's go back a little bit and talk about, because I have some layers of questions for you, but you, like you said, you were a licensed professional counselor. You went into private practice. what motivated you to start to diversify from that and start branching out in other?
Yeah, I mean, I had always done the speaking on the side part, but really it was the insurance aspect. And when we were looking at a lot of the healthcare changes going on, and
Right.
particularly on the insurance side,
Right.
it was I do not want, well, you never want as a business owner, only one stream of income. And I thought I need to diversify. And so that's where I definitely ramped up more of the speaking piece of it. I've been a supervisor since '03, so I had that as my backup. And then just throughout the years, I kept diversifying more and more, some of it out of just a cover your neck situation, which really helped out in COVID. But also just I get a little bit bored, and I find that a lot of the things just play off of each other, because questions I get when I do presentations, I can then, research or provide that information to clients or to my associates, and it just all works together really well.
So that sounds like a natural progression, right? So you're there, and then the speaking seems to go well. Then what then caused you to branch out into coaching, consulting, and different aspects from that?
Well, and during that time, I've written 5 books. So that was some of the speaking aspect too, because I realized writing a book was not as difficult in some ways as what I thought, because someone said, well, you already have the outline. Your presentations are the outline for your book. I was like, oh, well, that's a really good point.
Is that the title self-injury stuff or other stuff?
4 books are on self-injury, and one was a co-authored book with a former Plano ISD school board member who's also a lawyer, and it was just a very interesting book that popped up from there that takes a little while to explain it. And there are other books that I've started to write. It's just the time-wise, haven't quite sat down to finish them. But the coaching and the consulting sort of happened organically, because counselors that knew I was a supervisor, they knew I did ethics presentations, they contacted me for consults on ethical dilemmas. And then I just started to coach them some on, oh, well, this is the form you should have for this. Mm-hmm. Or this is what I do with my associates to cover myself as a supervisor, but also clients. Mm-hmm. And I was hesitant to go with the coaching thing because, and you may have had this experience, I've met so many people that seemed really flaky that called themselves coaches that I didn't want to be associated with that. And it wasn't until I started to get legit business coaching and, coach I've had for 6.5 years, that I go, oh, okay, this really is a legitimate thing. Yep. And I want to be associated on that side of it.
I started this show in 2016, the Concierge Coaches Show here. And then there were people, oh, you got to talk about crystals or woo-woo stuff. I'm like, all right, okay. And you know what? I've gone full tilt into this podcast. I have a lady who had a coaching practice packing lunches in Beverly Hills and teaching millionaire moms how to pack a lunch. Unbelievable, but she has a coaching practice around it. And all other types of coaches. There's a lady who's more or less like a paid Sunday school teacher, like, oh, I'll help you with your Beth Moore curriculum. Like, what? So, I've had coaches. So you're right. It is this kind of interesting industry, unregulated and stuff like that. But the one thing that I noticed, and I don't know if you share this, it's interesting to me, particularly with executives and business people, they are way more willing to come see a coach than a counselor. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Less stigma.
It's absolutely that. I've actually been going through a interview process with a large international company to come on as a coach. And they have a robust, program. And in their industry, they're sort of unique because there is a lot of stigma on the mental health side. A lot of that, like, oh, well, you must not be as good then.
Right.
So they're willing to have me come in and do the coaching. And then on my recommendation, if I go like, no, this goes beyond, then they have their referral systems. But yeah, you're absolutely right that. And I'd say it's not just successful people. There's just so much stigma in general about mental health. And frankly, Hollywood has helped contribute to that quite a bit in how they portray mental illness.
Yeah.
And much less some very unethical counselors in movies.
Yeah. That's true too. And it's funny. My degrees are, everything for me is clinical psych, and I just took an LPC license. Like, well, that sounds friendlier than being a psychologist. And then now the coach is more friendly than being a counselor. It's kind of funny. But really good. Yeah. So I think, that's good that you branched out in those directions. How have you navigated between being a practitioner and being like this administrator who's supervising interns and supervising associates, and you're opening up quite a large office complex with we'll get to that in a minute, but how do you navigate that or balance that?
Sometimes it gets a little out of balance. Sometimes it comes down to what's the most pressing thing right now. And I have often told individuals that it's one of those, it will get done. I cannot tell you when it will get done, but it will be done.
Yeah.
And I've learned to be really comfortable with that each day I have my absolute priority, this has to be done situation. And sometimes that means really late hours, but and people are like, oh, well, don't you get tired or you get burnt out? And not so much, because I think that's the thing when you're an entrepreneur and you're in it for your, the enjoyment of yourself and what you're capable of and all the ideas that go with it. It's actually energizing. And when I get on a roll with something, 4 hours will pass by like nothing. I look up, I'm like, oh,
yeah,
I guess I should probably go to bed now. But I'm like, I'm not tired. I'm like, but this is cool. Like, I'm on a roll. I don't want to stop.
No, that's a great answer. I mean, I have a similar path, worked in a state hospital, worked for the federal government, retired from the Justice Department, came back out, went to private practice, took on the LSOTP supervisor, LPC supervisor. Then Governor Perry appointed me as one of the deregistration evaluators, which was a big honor. And then, all this other co-wrote a book, on sex offender treatment. So it's very similar how a lot of us kind of take these similar without, we didn't know each other. I mean, but we're literally taking some very similar steps in our career progression, just because those are the, when you're in this space, those are the opportunities that kind of avail themselves. Right. And so, what, baby, I can write a book. And lo and behold, a book gets, you apply the to it, and you think, well, and then the other opportunity comes up, and it's so amazing where it's like, either people are jealous of your accomplishments, or they see you jack of all trades and master of none. And it's like, no, it's not that either. It's that you really want to exercise your brain to the fullest. You really want to exercise, if you can, the space, but it's also, like you said, that motivation and drive. I mean, this is kind of who I am. This is what I do. I can't imagine for me, not ever not working at all. I can work a reduced schedule. Yeah. You give me that, boy. Watch me here about 5 years. You're gonna see some Bruce Cameron on the reduced schedule. But anyway, so no, I think that's really good, and I get a lot of vicarious pleasure out of seeing, kind of reading about what you're doing. And so I guess kind of put us into if you don't mind, I know of your expansion of your practice, your office, your associates. You have allied professionals in different areas. You're going to be offering a lot of different services. So can you talk about that a little bit? Kind of share with our listeners with that.
So it's for the last probably almost 10 years, I've had this real interest in the mind-body connection. And some of that comes out of even much earlier in that when I was working in patient psych and then working at a outpatient facility that's no longer in business and seeing the side effects of all these medications and go, there has to be a different way. This doesn't seem right, what's going on. And along the same time, I think it was William Glasser had a book called Psychiatry is Dangerous to Your Health. And that really started to get my attention because it matched up some of the things that I was seeing and experiencing firsthand working with clients and patients.
Right.
And then just over the years being exposed to more and more things. And I remember there's a counselor that's also a nutritionist, and she came to our office and she was talking about just how much serotonin is actually manufactured in your gut, and learning more and more about nutrition and that part, because I had always talked about a trifecta of nutrition, exercise, and sleep. Those were always three key things. But now it's like, oh, now the research is like catching up with what I instinctually knew and what we've really talked about for centuries
Right.
of need. And so that's just sort of started it to lead me where I am today of naming the practice is now going to be Van Wellness Group. And it's the holistic approach to your success is the tagline. So we're looking at the mind, body, social, spiritual, and financial aspects, because all of those play together. And if one goes out of whack, it's sort of a domino effect. So we're talking nutrition, we're talking exercise and sleep, and looking at, of course, social relationships, looking at the spiritual aspect. And then once a week, having someone come in or maybe once a month initially, that can do some of the financial aspect of like, hey, this is how to get your life back in order. Or I desperately want a nutritionist at the office, been looking to have someone come on board that can actually be on site for us instead of referring out.
Okay.
But that's really where things are at, and looking to take at some point in the next year, when it becomes available, a little bit larger office space so we can do things like sound bathing. And we have someone that's going to do trauma-informed yoga that's more on the individual or one-on-one side. But then I know someone that does microcurrent. I know someone that does trauma-informed massage. So really just this whole package.
Yeah, what's the micro what?
Microcurrent. So it's something I'm still learning about it, but this individual had mold toxicity and Lyme disease and gone through all the traditional medical stuff. And I find this with several of my clients. They've gone through the whole medical thing. And when you're a medical anomaly and you don't check all the boxes and make it easy for doctors, oftentimes they go, well, it must be in your head. It must be just something you're making up, or you're exaggerating because you don't fit the box.
Right.
And so she went through all the testing and all the traditional stuff, and it wasn't getting fixed. So she started to look a lot on holistic stuff, and many people with Lyme disease have gone that route because they experienced the same thing. So microcurrent is just one treatment that's out there that it's sort of, there's, I know Hugh Hilton had talked about these like.
Or what? I mean, what is it like biofeedback, or is it like a
It's not quite biofeedback. It's actually like little currents of energy, little pads that I think you put on your body, much like a EKG, I guess you'd say. And it sends little electrical impulses to try to like get things back into whack. And I know that there's, and I'm just blanking, Beamer, I think is the name of the mat that does something similar.
Okay. And what is sound bathing? What was that?
I've been traditionally very skeptical about all these, what we would call the wooies, like the woo kind of stuff.
Is that the name of it? Sound bathing?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm writing this down. Okay. And so what kind of room or facility do you have to do that?
It very similar to a yoga room. It's just all about laying down, being comfortable. Lights are dim.
Okay.
With this individual, that she's gone through a lot of trainings. I vetted her. So it's like, well, what is this exactly? And you have those 7 bowls. You see these bowls that have the little sounds, and you see them done in yoga, and they produce certain vibrations.
Right.
Well, she's like, yeah, anyone can buy the bowls, but the problem is that if you don't know the vibration, if you don't know the sound, the tune,
right, the
frequency of it, you can have conflicting frequencies, and that actually can create a discomfort in the body. So I had the experiment because I was skeptical of it, and 2 of my associates were there. And so is my husband, who's extremely left brain and super skeptical about all of this.
Yeah.
And she went through about 1 hour and 15 minutes of it, and just doing the different pitches and the different, and just very relaxed, and asked us all what our experiences were afterwards. And I said, well, I felt something in my throat. It just sort of felt different. I don't know how to explain it, but I just felt like I kept needing to clear my throat. And she's like, well, you probably have something trapped there. And the thing that I noticed the next day, because I'm still on the skeptical side, is that the next day when I was in church and singing, I was singing clearer than I had sung in a really long time.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is weird. I'm like, maybe coincidental.
What your
Huh?
What'd your husband have to say? Did he do it too?
He did. He's always thinking about different stuff and ideas and whatever. He said he had never experienced it before, but for about 20 minutes, he had no thoughts. Like,
wow. Just cleared
nothing.
Huh?
Yeah.
You realize how many people with anxiety disorders need to clear their mind? It's particularly to sleep, that would take a bite out of Big Pharma, wouldn't it? Good God.
It would, because I expected him to fall asleep, because he can fall asleep anywhere. If he's laying down or it's dark, that's it. It's done. And it was actually when my associates fell asleep, because I heard someone sleeping. I just thought it was him behind me. And it was her. And so she was just super relaxed doing it. And there are things like digestively that you notice too, because of the different frequencies. So I was like, okay, I'm a little bit more open to this.
Yeah, no, I'm a ham operator. You know what that is?
Uh-huh.
So a lot of my training from the FCC is on frequencies.
Okay.
And transmitting things, and then building antennas that will transmit things that operate at a certain frequency, if that makes sense, right? So, but there's a lot to that, because anyway, this sound bathing thing, that's very interesting, because I have put myself in some situations with very low tones that can be very disruptive to like digestive things and stuff like that. So, well, good. Okay. Anyway, so the microcurrent, sound bathing, and did you say you're looking for a registered dietitian or a nutritionist?
Yes. Okay. Would love to have that at the office, because the brain the gut is the second brain.
Yeah.
And it's just undeniable how much our nutrition plays a factor in how we psychologically feel. It's just, and Big Pharma is going to have a hissy fit over it, but your body can heal itself if you give it the right tools and the right equipment. Your body can heal itself to a great degree. I'm not saying 100%, but I'm saying most of the common stuff that we deal with if we would just treat our bodies correctly,
Yeah.
we would be in a lot better position.
Oh man, I feel like you're attacking me. No, that's good. Yes. I'm it's not self-medication, but it's the zero sugar. Okay. It's a spiritual victory. Anyway, gosh. Okay. And so did you have a yoga person as well, or?
Yes, because I have counselors that are trained in EMDR, and then Amber has had training in trauma-informed yoga, so she's going to do that at least on a small scale for what the room allows.
Okay.
And then as we get a bigger space, then she'll be able to do bigger, bigger groups.
I really like this because I've made referrals to clients to go for treatment to somewhere, let's say nudge, nudge, wink, wink, Arizona, New Mexico, California. You know what I mean? Nudge, nudge, wink, say no more. And they got to go off 30 or 60 days, and they pay a lot of money for that experience. It's good stuff, but wow, to be able to kind of get this kind of high level access to modalities in an outpatient sphere would kind of pay as you go kind of thing too, Right? Yeah.
Because I know that's the thing I've realized is that in doing treatments, there's not one that's the end all be all. I think for each person, it's tailored. It should be tailored, and that there are many different paths that can lead to healing. And for us, as counselors to think, well, no, there's the only one path. I mean, that would be so short-sighted and uneducated. And that'd be true in any field. To think your field is the only solution would be very short-sighted.
No. Yeah, no. You're absolutely right. And the other thing that I've read about, and I'm sure you know more, is this kind of red light therapy. Not like the red light when you're doing yoga and it's infrared yoga. That's one thing. But I'm talking about these, like you can wear the lights or something. Do you know about that?
Yes.
Yeah, tell me about that.
So that is, to me, it's interesting. It comes from NASA. Originally that is its etiology, is what I've been told, is that they would use that to help the astronauts, because when you're up in space, you lose muscle mass. And so they would get back to Earth and they'd be really weak. And so they use the red lights to help with their muscles. Well, side effect is that they also noticed it reduced fat. It helped shrink the fat cells. So then red light, a lot of the red light therapies are more in the beauty industry at this point. And you can see, ads, a lot of these med spas where you get wrapped up in these arms and legs and you look like a little mummy, and it has the little red lights with the reflective surface.
On Amazon, you can buy that stuff on Amazon now.
You absolutely can. And it's supposed to shrink the fat cells, and then your body naturally processes it out. But red cells are also used for collagen production. So I have one. I'll admit it. I have a level of vanity on it that I have one of those red light face masks, and it actually has different lights. So purple is one thing, green's another, red's another, blue's another. You can do weird combos, and one light helps you with acne, another helps with collagen, another helps with something else that I don't remember. And that's something that I think is really cool, is just looking at lights, and of course the colors and frequencies and what that does. And naturally you can go Walgreens and now buy these red light therapy things for sore muscles.
Okay. Well, that is awesome. These are minimally invasive, non-trauma inducing, by the way.
Yes.
Modality. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Like, holy smokes. And look, they're not, but anyway, these are some great collateral treatments and interventions that you guys can all offer under one roof. I think that's great. And I'm glad to know that, of course, we have the practice office headquarters here looking at here in South Lake, and then our satellite in Highland Park, but but definitely not knowing this is really really good to see you guys have have this, you know, and can do kind of longer term outpatient work, I guess you might say, if the person still needs counseling or follow up. And so seemingly, you know, some of my work is getting people through the crisis of things. And then once the crisis subsides, I'm there for aftercare boosters and you know what I mean, the usual.
Yeah.
But sometimes I'm you know, I'm looking to kind of say, hey, you know, maybe you need a coach or maybe you need you know what I mean? You try X, Y, Z. So and I know it's early because you guys haven't officially per se open, but can people go into these things singularly? Like, oh, I don't need counseling, but I would like this yoga, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's
Or
going to be a variety of options on that. And should note that like everyone that's there, like when the office opens, we're all licensed counselors. It's just we all have our own little unique backgrounds and specialties. So we have counselors that are EMDR. We have counselors that only work with kiddos and are full-on play therapy. We have counselors that take I always get mixed up, Medicaid. That's for kids, the Superior, I think is the name of it. And we have some that are private pay. I have an associate, so she's able to offer lower cost visits. And so I mean, my goal has always been whenever I started to open up, besides just me in the office, was that I never thought that mental health should be a luxury item. I still don't think mental health should be a luxury item. I think you have to have some skin in the game, that there's value when you pay something. But I think that you also have to just tailor things for a client's needs. And that's where I've seen some deficiencies. And so I thought, well, the more well-rounded, the more things that you can offer, the more tools in the toolbox, so to speak, not just within all the counseling lingo, but like, well, hey, let's talk about your nutrition. Let's talk about exercise. Let's talk about some of these other resources that are available. And let's just look at the whole big picture.
Yeah. I mean, I could see, of course, you have counseling or therapy clients and they funnel over to these other services, but I also see this possibility where people saw these auxiliary services, if you will, but then kind of even pushed up to, hey, you know what, maybe I need counseling. Hey, you know what, maybe I need coaching to, you know, clear the next thing. So it kind of, there's deduction and induction. You know, you kind of, I think you're in a position to be able to get clients, you know, in both directions. And so that's what's, you know, that's fascinating for a guy like me. It's one direction. You know what I mean? It's one direction, man. There's no like, well, you know, I got this other thing over here. Like, no, you know, and so, no, I really, you know, this is very informative, man. I'm any other modalities you offer that I got my pen here, man.
You know what, we're going to be open. We're just sort of seeing where everything goes and feedback from the community. I know that I've heard some needs that are in Coppell, but I also think there are probably needs in every community of just for adults, having a place where adults can go and where it's not a bar, where it's not a 12-step group, but just a group like a social, like, hey, let's just, you know, sit and talk and share, and where it's not just like a bridge club meeting, but it's something that's a little bit, you know, deeper than that.
Right.
You know, looking at different support groups or coaching groups and expanding that based on need.
I just recently, I'm kind of still in it. It's something like it's a gym, but it also does the prepared meals for you. Okay. And the thing I like about the gym, anyway, it's the Nautilus machines, but these are the 2023 Jerry Jones, Dallas Cow. I mean, Nautilus. Wow. Machines. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The serious stuff.
Real serious Nautilus medical grade Jerry Jones. I said, just so, but then Lori, the food, like, all right, food's the second thing, leaky gut, this and that, monocal. calories, make sure this and that. Lord, the food was like a mortgage. I signed up for it. Oh yeah, only this and this for the gym, and then, but you know what? You want to do our food? Okay, sounds good to me. Good God. You said, oh well, what do you spend at the grocery store? I'm like, I don't spend that in months, So I had to dump the food. I mean, I was on it for a month and started to copycat things and buy lots of containers, and then try to, I'm gonna make shepherd's pie. Here's a can of this, here's a can of that, and here's potatoes, and sprinkle it. Anyway, I'm not saying you guys should go into the food thing, but you talked about the leaky gut and all that stuff is kind of right there. Add that registered dietitian or some sort of an affiliated kitchen or commercial kitchen or something. Man, that's a wrap, because then you really, you know what I mean? Now you've covered second brain. Like, no, man, like we have this dietitian or whatever, and we have the Lori Van kitchen.
You never know. I mean, it's.
And for the love of God, when you do that, please call me so I can pick meals.
Who knows? Someone hears this and they reach out and they're like, "Hey, we're local. We'll team up with you." I'm like, "Let's talk," because I'm all about collaborations.
As a matter of fact, I've had a couple of folks on here that were dietitians, and two of them are in Fort Worth. I wonder what they're doing with their coaching practice, and they're doing pretty well. But it's just that, man, you can make those meals scale, box them up. I mean, the most expensive thing would be the Ziploc plastic containers or the whatever Tupperware, but you know what I'm talking about. You buy them at the store, I don't even know. Anyway, Hefty or whatever, you know what I mean? So you're paying for these containers, but if you can get your container costs down. I mean, as a business guy, I see it. I see the vision, but I don't want anything to do with it. I don't like to boil water. So, but anyway, okay. So, well, man, this is fantastic. Let me ask you a few business questions, if you like. I know, did in your business you've acquired staff, and in my business, I've acquired staff as well. I had one time I had 6 LPC is underneath me and all this other stuff. Now I've kind of not in that space anymore, and but I do have 2.5 employees, and I'm going to probably take on a salaried employee here, and then keep probably 2 1099 people, just because they don't set their schedule, whatever. Is your company, is it like a corporation? Do you have salaried as well as contract employees? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So when I started off with associates working underneath me, or back then it was called interns, and they were your standard contract employee, because that was the trend. That's just what counselors did. Right. But as the Texas Workforce Commission started to crack down on that and actively seemed to be looking for counselors trying to do that, and talking with CPAs, they said, well, here are all the safeguards, but the reality is that the Texas Workforce Commission is strong, and the amount of money you'll spend to defend yourself, and if you are found in fault of it, the penalties that you're going to pay, they're like, you really may want to consider just make them W-2s. I'm like, well, I don't know how to do that taxes. Well, thankfully, some of the payroll companies started to become easier to do that, just inexpensive online ones. And as soon as the one that I used became available, I'm like, done deal. Like, they're going to take care of all of that stuff for me. So they just tell me what to write the check for. They do the filing for me, all of it. So I've had W-2s since probably 2019, I think 2018 or 2019. Something.
So you found a way to do W-2s that's not real stressful. You have a payroll company that does it, and it's not stressful.
No.
Okay.
It's not. All I do is I calculate, what did they bring in for the month? And I do it on a percentage system. So if, let's say, they brought in $1,000 worth of client visits for the month, I take out the supervision fee, and then whatever that remainder is, I do as a percentage. My associates get 70%. I mean, I'm not.
I might get back in the. I'm kidding. I'm not.
So I mean, I know a lot of supervisors, a lot of practices, they're taking 50-50, they're taking the 60% and the associate gets the 40.
So
I'm
you're
like,
doing 70-30? What'd you say?
yeah, I'm doing 70-30. Like Deanne gets the 70.
Okay. Okay. Good. Because look, Lori, my phone rings off the hook. Are you taking any supervisors? Are you taking, or are you supervising anybody? I'm like, no. So, okay. This is good. It's like having that bad broker that you work for, a real estate agent. Just kidding. You're the good broker. Okay. Well, that is good to know on that. Awesome.
You still make enough money doing that. Because I know some people cry for, I'm like, oh my gosh, 70% they're getting, and I only get 30. It's like they're paying my supervision. I already take that out.
Right.
And so the amount of time it takes me to do the little calculations, it's like that's minimal. So I'm still making just fine. Like I believe in paying it forward too. There's a balance in being an entrepreneur or business owner of like, yes, make a profit, but don't be greedy. And you're still giving back to the community.
So does having these staff members make any impact on your malpractice insurance, or did you have to do any other insurance types of thingies?
Not really, because my associates,
they have their own insurance. Right?
Yeah, they that's part of the qualifiers. They have to carry their own. And then on mine, I have them listed too of like, hey, just FYI, this is who is an employee. And they go, well, how many hours? But it doesn't really change my rate any with my malpractice insurance. So it's really not been a big deal on that front.
Yeah, no, this is good stuff. Don't send me a bill when the show's over. I've been giving good advice here. Yeah, I tell you, Lori Van, ladies and gentlemen, this is what you got, a veteran here. You've been a supervisor 1 year longer than I have, and I'm usually the oldest guy in the building. So I am the oldest guy, but I guess not with supervision. But good for you. No, the reason I'm asking these questions, there's a lot of people that are good practitioners and they're crappy business people.
Mm-hmm.
And they either need to outsource that if they have the aspirations to do so, or they need to get other people involved in their life. Mm-hmm. Or I mean, for me, I have luckily a payroll company and a CPA that are my aorta and left ventricle. You know what I mean? Those, and the lawyers kind of where in the closet. But yeah, so it's good to have the staff members around like that. And it sounds like you've created a very efficient, clean line business model that doesn't stress you out, as even though you're the administrator or the boss or whatever, you're able to do both, enjoy a clinical speaking coaching caseload as well as being the administrator as well, huh?
Well, it is. And it is so much about finding the right team. And this is something one of my coaches early on says, like, you're trying to be the chief bottle washer, cook, and everything. And he's like, think of an octopus. You are the center and your tentacles are all over this place and you've got to start outsourcing. I'm like, but I don't have the money to outsource. And that is such a key thing that entrepreneurs will say. But you also have to look at, you also don't have the time and money not to go ahead and do it. And so it is this very catch-22 of sometimes you go in the hole a little bit in order to get out of the hole.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because I had to do that. Now, when I set up, my deal was a professional association. I don't know, back in the day, you could have a PA next to your name, and that was a mechanism. You can do S Corp or C Corp and all this. Man, I was one of the last guys in women or whatever to get one. And then with the Texas Workforce Commission, you're right. And then the tax structure, I had to become an employee of my practice.
Yeah.
Stuff from the Workforce Commission about stuff. I'm like, oh, that's right. You know what I mean? And so it's pretty interesting how there are other ways to do your taxes. You could do stuff at the end. You could, do 1099s yourself and pay taxes. I mean, pull out quarterly taxes, right? Pay the
Mhm.
man. Everything's cool. We're paying taxes over here, but not
Yep.
have to be a part of the workforce. And then boom, there I am, the employee of my own company. No, it's been fine. And actually it's been better of a tax burden to say I'm an employee of this company that this guy,
Mhm.
and then it's been helpful a little bit more on personal income tax. Anyway, well, fantastic.
And,
Well, we
and
got
that's something, I mean, I would say counselors definitely need to have a CPA. They need to find someone that actually has experience with counselors and really understands all the nuances. So,
yep,
how I do my business is not how maybe you should do your business. There are a lot of things that I do that allow me to be a LLC instead of a PLLC because of the multiple streams of income that my CPAs are like, no, it makes more sense for you to be a LLC S corp versus a PLLC.
right,
And there's a lot of things of like, well, what if you sell your business? It's like they're they're not buying the van and wellness. They're because there's too much liability associated with it. They're going to take the practice itself and then they're going to name it whatever their company
right,
is.
right,
And that's what you see happening in the private practice world is there's a lot of companies, a lot of practices getting bought out and then the name changes. And so then they're the property and the clients that get sold basically.
right, right. So yeah, that's an interesting distinction there between the PLLC and an LLC. That's the S corporation. Those things, and on I'll have to get with you later on one of my consulting things that, oh no, you need to do a DBA for this kind of sector. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then we'll pull it in. So yeah, it does get a little complicated, but it sounds like you found, like you said, you found your support staff, allied staff to help guide you through it, make it seamless so you can do everything. We got about 2 minutes left. So anything else about what you're doing that you'd like for our viewers and listeners to hear about, see about?
Well, the Institute for Non-Suicidal Self-Injury is something that is based on almost 25 years of experience working with that behavior. And because I had developed so many resources for it, that's where, again, one of my coaches said, it's time to split it off
Yeah.
and make it its own entity. And so the Institute for NSSI offers really the only exclusively self-injury support groups for teen girls that we meet in person at an office in all of North Texas. I don't know of any other exclusively self-injury resources anywhere in Texas, except for what we've been doing for like over 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And with so we also have the women's group that's online. It's more of a coaching format. And I lead that, and it's exclusively self-injury. It's limited to 6 attendees per group. And then I have a caregivers of those that self-harm. And then the Institute, we have 3 levels of training for whether that's treatment centers or school districts or whichever group just wants to get trained up on the various levels of understanding and treating the behavior.
All right. Awesome. So now, how can folks find you on social media and everything?
There are a lot of ways you can find me. It depends on what you're necessarily looking for. I think if you Google Lori Van, I'm popping up somewhere. So definitely on LinkedIn, gonna find me, YouTube, the Lori Van MALPCS for both of those. Facebook, you'll see whether that's Lori Van Speaking, and then there's the Van and Associates that's going to get changed soon to the Van Wellness Group. On Instagram, I have 3 different accounts. So the Institute for NSSI is on Instagram and TikTok. Then there's Lori Van Coaching on Instagram, and then there's Lori Van Speaking on Instagram as well. So and I have Twitter, but I don't really do Twitter.
A little bit of chaos.
X, whatever it's called.
Yeah, X now. All righty then. Well, folks, first, Lori, thanks for coming on the show. Your wealth of information, very inspirational. Folks, if you're in the North Texas, you can be anywhere. I'm sure you do telehealth and telecounseling as well. Please visit Lori, look her up, and participate in one of the many types of services that they offer. Such a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show. And folks, you can see our show on Apple Podcasts, on iHeartMedia. Amazon Audible picked us up as well with a little podcast that could, I say. We can be reached on Facebook, Concierge Coaches Show, Instagram, Concierge_coaches. My coaching site is conciergecoach.net. Go figure. And with that, we'll bid everybody a great week. Have a blessed and safe week, and we'll see everybody here next time on the Concierge Coaches Show on LA Talk Radio. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody. See you, Lori.
You're listening to the Concierge Coaches Show with Bruce Cameron and Wayne Fritz, only on LA Talk Radio.